4 years ago, inflation in America hit 9.1%, the fastest prices had risen in 4 decades. Today, it's 3.5%, and in all that time, prices never came back down. A basket of goods that cost $1 in January 2020 costs about $1.29 today. Here's the part almost nobody says out loud. It will never cost $1 again. That's not a failure. That is the design.
To understand why, stop picturing inflation as a number on the news and picture it as a machine. 3 engines: spending, costs, and belief, all pushing on one output: the price of everything. And right now, the machine is running live. Its operator, the Federal Reserve, has spent 5 straight years above its own target. And next week, it decides whether to pull a lever it hasn't touched in 3 years.
Engine 1. Demand pull. When people have more spending power than the economy has goods, buyers bid against each other for the same shelves, and prices climb. That was 2021. Stimulus payments and lockdown savings had swollen bank accounts just as supply chains broke, so record demand hit half-empty shelves. The Consumer Price Index, the government's measure of what households actually pay, peaked at 9.1% in June 2022. Economists still argue over the mix. How much was stimulus? How much was broken supply? How much was companies using the moment to widen margins? The collision itself is not in dispute. Engine 2. Cost push. When something businesses buy gets more expensive, oil, parts, imported goods, each seller passes part of that cost downstream until it lands on a price tag. This is 2026's engine, and it's running on 2 fuels. The first is tariffs, taxes charged on imports. Staff at the St. Louis Fed estimate tariffs explain roughly half of today's overshoot above the Fed's 2% target. Dallas Fed economists counted the tariffs actually collected and found they added about 0.8 of a percentage point, with the effect peaking early this year.
And here, the machine's own engineers disagree. The Minneapolis Fed published a rebuttal with a blunt title: "Tariffs Can't Explain Rising Goods Inflation." And a simple logic: if tariffs were doing the pushing, the goods most exposed to tariffs should be the ones rising fastest. Too often, they aren't. So 2 branches of the Federal Reserve are contradicting each other in public. The honest reading? Tariffs are pushing somewhere between a nudge and half the problem, and nobody is certain which.
The second fuel is oil. The war with Iran began choking oil supplies in late February. By May, energy prices were running 23.5% above a year earlier. Gasoline was up more than 40%. Then, a ceasefire in mid-June. Energy prices dropped 5.7% in a single month, and that one drop is most of the reason headline inflation cooled to 3.5%. It's also already stale. Strikes resumed in early July, and the week this episode was made, oil crossed $100 a barrel again. None of that is in the official numbers yet. July's inflation data doesn't arrive until mid-August.
Now, a crucial mechanical detail. A cost shock on its own raises prices once. It becomes ongoing inflation only if it keeps repeating, or if it changes what people believe. Which brings us to engine 3, the quiet one, the one the Fed actually fears. Engine 3, expectations. If workers believe prices will keep climbing, they ask for raises now. If landlords believe it, the next lease resets higher. If businesses believe it, new price lists go out early. Every one of those moves is reasonable self-defense, and added together, they produce the exact inflation everyone was defending against. Belief becomes fuel. So the Fed tracks belief like an instrument reading. The University of Michigan asks consumers every month. Right now, they expect 4.2% inflation over the next year and 3.3% over the long run, drifting above the range they gave in 2024. In this machine, drift is how the last disaster started. In the 1970s, oil shocks slammed into an economy where inflation was already high. And for years, policymakers treated each shock as temporary. Belief slipped its anchor. By 1980, prices were rising almost 15% a year, and Americans planned around it. Automatic raises, preemptive price hikes, contracts with escalators built in. Unhooking that belief took Paul Volcker's Federal Reserve driving interest rates to nearly 20%. And the cost was 2 recessions, with unemployment near 11%. To be clear, 2026 is not the 1970s. Today's drift is measured in tenths of a point. But that history is exactly why tenths of a point make central bankers reach for the brake. Which brings the machine to its operator. The Fed's target is 2% inflation a year, measured by a slightly broader index than the CPI, but the story's the same. 5 straight years above it. In June, its statement ended with a sentence central banks almost never write. The committee will deliver price stability. Its lever is the interest rate, the price of borrowing, parked today at 3.5 to 3.75%. Pulling it up squeezes engine 1 and steadies engine 3. The committee meets July 28th and 29th. As of July 23rd, futures markets put the odds of a hike near 1 in 3. A week earlier, closer to 1 in 10. Those are bets, not forecasts, and this episode makes no prediction. But whatever happens, it would be the first hike since July 2023.
And that returns us to the staircase, the distinction this whole machine was hiding. Inflation is a rate, how fast prices are climbing. The price level is the height they've already climbed. When inflation falls from 9.1 to 3.5, the staircase doesn't go down. The steps just get shorter. That's disinflation, still climbing more slowly. Deflation, prices actually falling, would mean the staircase steps down, and the Fed is built to stop that from ever happening. So the 29% climb since 2020 is permanent. If the Fed wins completely from here, prices rise about 2% a year every year, on purpose. Your dollar never recovers. It shrinks on schedule.
Why build a machine that never reverses? Because falling prices across a whole economy are a trap. If everything will be cheaper next year, you wait. Businesses sell less, so they cut wages and cut workers, and prices fall further. Debt makes the spiral vicious. Your loan is fixed in dollars, so as prices and paychecks sink, the same debt gets heavier. America ran this experiment once. From 1929 to 1933, prices fell by roughly a quarter, and the economy collapsed into the Great Depression. The economist Irving Fisher captured the spiral in one line. The more the debtors pay, the more they owe. That is the monster this machine is built never to meet again.
So there's the machine, whole. Spending pushes, costs push, belief pushes, and the operator leans on a brake, aiming for a staircase that rises 2% a year forever. Next week, the operator decides whether to lean harder. Either way, you now know what to listen for. When officials promise to bring inflation down, they are promising smaller steps. Prices coming down was never on the table, by design.